My brother faked a pregnancy to steal our inheritance. A DNA test exposed everything and he lost it all. What he didn't realize was that the family trust our grandfather created had safeguards specifically designed to catch exactly this kind of fraud, and his greed was about to cost him far more than just money. Let me start at the beginning in August 2020 when my grandfather, Theodore Blackwell, passed away at 92. He'd built Blackwell Industries from a small manufacturing shop into a company worth $180 million over 6 decades. He was traditional, deeply religious, and obsessed with family legacy. I'm Charlotte Blackwell, 31 years old, working as an architect in Seattle. My older brother Derek was 34, living in Boston and working in finance. We'd grown up privileged but not spoiled, both earning our own success while knowing that someday we'd inherit Grandpa's fortune. The will reading took place at the offices of Whitmore and Associates, Grandpa's legal team for 40 years. Derek flew in from Boston and we sat across from Jonathan Whitmore, the senior partner who'd known our family since before we were born. Theodore was very specific about his wishes. Jonathan began adjusting his reading glasses. He wanted to ensure his legacy continued through future generations. He opened the trust document and what he read changed everything. The Blackwell Family Trust, valued at approximately $180 million in assets, stocks and real estate, shall be held in trust until certain conditions are met. Specifically, the first grandchild of Theodore Blackwell to produce a great-grandchild shall inherit the entire trust, to be managed for the benefit of that great-grandchild and their family. I felt my stomach drop. Derek leaned forward, his eyes sharp with calculation. So the first one of us to have a kid gets everything? Derek asked. Not quite, Jonathan clarified. The first one to have a child receives control of the trust and its income, approximately $8 to $12 million annually. The principal remains in trust for future generations. What if neither of us has children? I asked. After 10 years, if neither grandchild has produced a great-grandchild, the entire estate is liquidated and donated to Theodore's chosen charities. He wanted to incentivize family continuation. Derek and I exchanged glances. We both knew what this meant. Neither of us was married, neither had serious relationships at the time, and we were both focused on our careers. There are extensive verification requirements, Jonathan continued, reading from the document. Birth certificates, DNA testing to confirm lineage, medical records documenting the pregnancy and birth. Theodore was concerned about potential fraud. Of course Grandpa would think of that. He'd been a careful, suspicious man who trusted contracts more than words. Over the next 6 months, Derek and I maintained our usual cordial but distant relationship. We texted occasionally, had awkward phone calls on holidays but lived separate lives. I was dating casually but nothing serious. My focus was on landing a partnership at my architectural firm. Then in March 2021, Derek called with unexpected news. Charlotte, I wanted you to hear this from me first. Natasha and I are expecting. Natasha was Derek's girlfriend of 8 months, a corporate trainer he'd met at a conference. I'd met her twice briefly. She seemed nice enough but somewhat materialistic and clearly impressed by Derek's lifestyle. Wow, congratulations, I managed to say, processing what this meant. Derek was about to inherit control of $180 million. We're excited. It wasn't exactly planned, but sometimes life surprises you, right? Something in his tone felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. When are you due? November. We're having a gender reveal party next month if you want to fly out. I did fly out for the party held at Derek's expensive Boston townhouse. Natasha looked appropriately pregnant, maybe 4 months along, wearing a flowing dress and glowing with what seemed like genuine excitement. Friends and family gathered to watch them cut a cake that revealed pink frosting. It's a girl, Natasha announced, tears streaming down her face as Derek hugged her. I watched them carefully. Derek seemed thrilled, but there was something performative about it, like he was playing a role rather than experiencing genuine emotion. But maybe I was just being paranoid and jealous about the inheritance. Over the summer, Derek posted regular pregnancy updates on social media. Ultrasound photos, belly progression shots, nursery decorations. Natasha looked increasingly pregnant, attending prenatal yoga classes and posting about pregnancy cravings and discomfort. But something nagged at me. I couldn't see Natasha's face clearly in most of the pregnancy photos. The ultrasound images seemed generic, lacking the usual hospital information watermarks. And Derek was oddly evasive when I asked specific questions about their doctor or hospital plans. In September 2021, I was working late at my firm when I received a random LinkedIn message from someone named Jessica Chen. The message was brief but alarming. You don't know me, but I'm friends with Natasha. I think you should know something about her pregnancy. Can we talk privately? I stared at that message for 10 minutes before responding with my phone number. Jessica called within 5 minutes. I'm sorry to reach out like this, Jessica began, her voice nervous. But Natasha and I used to be roommates in college. We reconnected recently and she told me about this pregnancy and the inheritance situation. My heart started pounding. What about it? Natasha's not pregnant. She never was. She's wearing a fake belly and planning to buy a baby or fake a miscarriage at the last minute. I thought you should know because it's fraud and it's wrong. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. How do you know this for certain? She got drunk at a party 2 weeks ago and told me the whole plan. She laughed about it, said Derek came up with the idea and promised her $10 million if she went along with it. She showed me the fake belly in her purse. After Jessica hung up, I sat in my dark office trying to process this information. My brother was committing inheritance fraud. The question was, how could I prove it and what should I do about it? I called Jonathan Whitmore first thing the next morning and explained what I'd learned. There was a long pause on the line. These are serious allegations, Charlotte. If true, this is criminal fraud in addition to trust violations. But we need proof before we can act. What kind of proof? The trust requires DNA verification anyway, so the truth will come out eventually. But if we can establish fraud before a birth certificate is filed, we can prevent them from ever claiming the inheritance. How do we do that? We need to catch them in the act. Medical records, witnesses to the deception, documentation of the fake pregnancy. Can you get close enough to gather evidence? Over the next 6 weeks, I became an investigator. I hired a private detective named Marcus Rivera who specialized in fraud cases. He started following Natasha and Derek, documenting their activities and looking for proof of the deception. Marcus discovered that Natasha had purchased a progressive pregnancy belly prosthetic online for $300. He found no medical records for her at any Boston area hospital or OB/GYN office. He interviewed Natasha's neighbors who'd never seen her at prenatal appointments or displaying any pregnancy symptoms beyond the visible belly. Most damning, Marcus tracked down the source of the ultrasound photos Derek had been posting. They were stock images downloaded from a pregnancy website, with metadata showing when and where they'd been obtained. But I needed more. I needed them to reveal the plan themselves. I decided to attend Natasha's baby shower in late October, bringing my phone recording device hidden in my purse. The shower was lavish, held at a country club with expensive gifts and catered food. Natasha looked very pregnant, her prosthetic belly convincing under a form-fitting dress. She played the role perfectly, talking about baby kicks and Braxton Hicks contractions and nursery plans. Late in the shower, I found Natasha alone in the bathroom, touching up her makeup. I locked the door behind me. I know, I said simply. Natasha went pale. Know what? About the fake pregnancy. About the plan to defraud the trust. She tried to deny it, but I could see panic in her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Jessica Chin told me everything. And I've been documenting the fraud for 2 months. You have no medical records, no real doctor, and Derek posted fake ultrasound images from stock photo websites. Natasha's hand went unconsciously to her belly, and I noticed for the first time that it moved slightly independent of her body. The prosthetic was showing. What do you want? She whispered finally. The truth. On recording. And I want to know whose idea this was. Natasha collapsed onto the closed toilet seat, tears running down her face. It was Derek's idea. After your grandfather died, he became obsessed with the inheritance. He said we could fake a pregnancy, then claim a late-term miscarriage right before I was supposed to give birth. Or we could buy a baby on the black market and use it to claim the inheritance. And you agreed? He promised me $10 million. I'm $200,000 in debt from business school. That money would change my life. It's fraud, Natasha. You could both go to prison. I know. I've been terrified for months, but Derek kept saying we'd gotten too far to back out. He said the trust verification wouldn't happen until after the birth, so we'd have time to figure out the details. I recorded this entire conversation on my phone, making sure to ask clarifying questions that established Derek's role as the mastermind and Natasha's willing participation. When I left the bathroom, I went directly to Derek, who was charming guests and accepting congratulations on his upcoming fatherhood. Derek, we need to talk. Privately. His smile faltered when he saw my expression. We went to an empty room and I closed the door. I know about the fake pregnancy. Natasha just confessed everything. Derek's face went through a rapid series of expressions. Shock, anger, calculation, and finally resignation. How long have you known? Long enough to document everything. The fake belly, the stock photo ultrasounds, the complete lack of medical records. Jonathan Whitmore knows. A private investigator has been following you both for 6 weeks. Derek sat down heavily, his usual confidence evaporating. What are you going to do? That depends on what you do next. You can come clean voluntarily, admit to the attempted fraud, and accept the consequences. Or I can present all the evidence to Jonathan and let him pursue criminal charges. There's no third option where we just pretend this didn't happen? None. Grandpa built safeguards into the trust specifically to prevent this. Did you really think you could fake a pregnancy and nobody would verify it? Derek put his head in his hands. The money, Charlotte. $180 million. I couldn't let that go to charity just because neither of us wanted kids right now. So you committed fraud instead. Multiple felonies. Conspiracy, trust fraud, filing false documents. What happens if I confess? Jonathan will probably recommend the trustees not pursue criminal charges if you cooperate fully. But you'll be permanently disqualified from the inheritance. Any children you actually have in the future won't be eligible either. Derek's face went white. Even my real future kids? Fraud disqualifies you completely. It's in the trust document. Grandpa was very clear about that. The next day, Derek and Natasha met with Jonathan Whitmore and confessed to the entire scheme. I was present via video call, watching as they admitted to planning the fake pregnancy from the moment they heard about the trust conditions. Jonathan's face was stone as he took notes. This is one of the most brazen inheritance frauds I've encountered in 40 years of practice. You're both fortunate that Charlotte gave you the opportunity to confess rather than facing criminal prosecution. What happens now? Derek asked quietly. Jonathan pulled out the trust document and read the relevant section. Any heir found to have engaged in fraud, misrepresentation, or illegal activity in pursuit of the trust assets shall be permanently and irrevocably disqualified, including all their descendants in perpetuity. So I lose everything? Derek's voice cracked. You never had anything to lose. The trust was never yours. You merely had potential eligibility that you've now forfeited through your own criminal behavior. The trust document was amended to formally disqualify Derek and his descendants. Natasha signed a statement admitting her role and agreeing never to contact our family again. She and Derek broke up within a month, with Derek's promised $10 million disappearing along with his inheritance eligibility. As for criminal charges, Jonathan negotiated an agreement. Derek and Natasha would face no prosecution if they each completed 500 hours of community service, paid $50,000 in restitution for legal costs, and remained permanently disqualified from the trust. Derek took the deal. His reputation in Boston's finance world was destroyed, and he eventually moved to California to start over. Last I heard, he was working as a junior analyst, making a fraction of his previous salary. This left me as the only remaining eligible heir. The pressure to have children and secure the inheritance felt overwhelming at first. But then I realized something important. I didn't want to have children just for money. I met with Jonathan and proposed a modification to the trust. Since I was now the only eligible heir, could we create a different structure that didn't incentivize having children I might not want? Jonathan consulted with the trustees and came back with a proposal. If I remained childless after 5 years, I could petition to restructure the trust to provide me with income while preserving the principal for eventual charitable donation per Grandpa's original wishes. This gave me breathing room to live my life without the pregnancy pressure hanging over me. I continued my architectural career, eventually making partner at my firm. I dated people I genuinely liked rather than evaluating them as potential co-parents for a trust inheritance. In 2024, I did meet someone special. James was an environmental engineer who knew nothing about my family's wealth. We connected over a shared love of sustainable design and hiking. I told him about the trust situation early on, wanting to be transparent. So you're saying you have access to millions if you have a kid, but you don't have to? James summarized. Basically. But I don't want to have children for money. I want to have them because I actually want to be a parent. That seems healthy. Kids are terrible investments anyway. We got married in 2025 in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Derek was not invited. We decided together that we did want children eventually, but on our timeline, not the trust's. I'm currently pregnant with our first child, due in 4 months. This baby will eventually inherit control of the Blackwell Trust, making them one of the wealthiest children in the country. But James and I have already decided we'll raise them normally with jobs and responsibilities and an understanding that wealth is a tool, not an identity. Derek reached out when he heard about my pregnancy. His email was brief. Congratulations. I'm sorry for what I did. You deserved the inheritance all along. I didn't respond. Some things can't be fixed with apologies. The irony isn't lost on me that Derek's fraud and disqualification meant I eventually inherited everything anyway. If he'd just been patient and let life unfold naturally, he might have had children first and legitimately won. But his greed and willingness to commit fraud cost him not just the inheritance, but his relationship with his family, his career reputation, and his future children's eligibility. Grandpa's trust structure was bizarre and old-fashioned, incentivizing childbirth in a way that felt archaic. But his fraud protections were brilliant. He understood that $180 million would tempt people to lie, cheat, and deceive, so he built verification requirements that would catch any scheme. The fake pregnancy plan was doomed from the start. Even if I hadn't caught them, the trust's DNA testing requirements would have exposed the fraud eventually. Derek just accelerated his own disqualification by involving Natasha and creating evidence that could be documented and recorded. Today, the Blackwell Trust is worth approximately $240 million after 4 years of growth. That money will eventually be managed for my child's benefit, providing them with resources to do genuine good in the world. But the real inheritance isn't the money. It's the lesson about integrity, patience, and understanding that shortcuts lead to disaster. Derek learned that lesson the hard way, and his attempted fraud will define him forever. As for Natasha, I heard she moved to Florida and started over with a new career. She sent me a handwritten apology letter last year, taking full responsibility for her role in the fraud. I appreciated the gesture but didn't respond. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive. The fake pregnancy scheme destroyed Derek's life, ended his relationship, cost him his career, and permanently disqualified him from generational wealth. All for a plan that was obviously going to fail the moment real verification was required. Thanks for following this complicated family drama. Sometimes the pursuit of wealth reveals exactly who people are, and those revelations can never be undone. Until we meet again, folks. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your thoughts.